we were funded, the last company was funded primarily by Excel and Baker Communications in New York. Meritech came in right before the IPO was supposed to happen. I'll talk about that in a minute, but I can say without reservation, actually I was joking with Paul the other day, that our goal in the new company is to get big enough so that Meritech can fund us again. And I'm only sort of kidding about that. Of all the people that we've worked with, these guys were the cream of the crop. So we can talk about what you look for in an investor at another time. We have some strong feelings that were hard-earned, but I would say if you have the opportunity to work with Meritech, you ought to. All right, so I'm a co-founder, serial pathological co-founder. I co-founded several businesses with my brother Matthew, my younger brother Matthew, almost always co-president, co-CEO, which is, if you've done this before or talked about it, is the triple Lindy of co-founding. Family, co-CEO, co-founder. Each one of these things, in my experience, makes it a little harder to get funding done, and at times harder to run the company, but I think clearly was the best way to go for us. So I want to talk to you about that. I want to talk to you about what worked for us, what didn't work for us, and why we keep doing it. I'll give you a little bit of the deep history. My brother and I, Matthew, and I both went to Yale. He was a literature major. I was an architecture major, so we were well suited for technology in Silicon Valley. We got out and built houses for a while. Another great way to get ready to do computer science. And then we did this, Roach Designs. Right? We were never short of ambition. We were thinking at the time whether we really wanted to be more like Frank Lloyd Wright or Mies van der Rohe, which one we were going to be. Not, could we pay the bills, could we afford the truck, and all these other things. So we started Roach Designs. We did it for a while. We built a bunch of houses. We got involved in ornamental design, ornamental architecture, and because we were saddled with the Yale degree, we ended up thinking a lot about the semiotics of design. How do you build a pattern language for architecture, for ornament, so that it made sense and could be reintroduced into the mechanics of building a home. And I only say this to show you just how out in space we were. Nothing at all to do with building a business and selling business and hiring employees and making money, but that's what we brought to the party. So I got out of college. I tried a couple of things that my parents didn't want me to do, and finally decided to start this business. I was out a couple of years before Matthew, and Matthew joined me. God only knows why. He actually got great grades in college. He went to Cambridge for a year, ended up getting all A's at Cambridge, so he could have done anything, but he decided to join me. And I think that's because he was excited about the journey. Right, so this is the first thing. If you're going to hook up with somebody else and you're spending your time trying to decide practically, is this person completing me as a team? Are they making me more investable? All these practical considerations, I think those are important. But if you don't want to do the journey together, if you're not more excited about doing it than what this person adds in a financial or nuts and bolts way, then I think you ought to think some more about working with them. All right, so you got to desire the journey together. Second thing we learned in this thing is about supporting one another. So I was older. I am older. It mattered more back then. As we get older, it matters less and less. I had an architecture degree. He had an English degree, and we were doing architecture. So it was very natural for me to be the superordinate partner and him to be the subordinate partner. I knew what I was doing. He didn't know what he was doing. I did good design. He did pretty crappy design, at least in the beginning. But that didn't matter. We are and we're brothers. We were very supportive of one another, and there were times at which I just had to say, Matthew's designing the stained glass window, not me. This one's his. And I think this is important in a partnership. I think you have to allow the other person to grow. You have to allow the other person to become a peer partner, even in times where it feels like it's putting you at some personal risk. So you got to promote your partner. After the house, our final house was built, we built a beautiful house in San Mateo Park. It was very ornamental. A lot of people stopped by afterwards and asked us to do things. It was very hard to stop building based on this house, but we did, and kept hearing from people, I understand you were the designer of this house, and I would say, no, Matthew and I were the designers of this house. Let me show you what he did. And I don't know why I did that. I wasn't that generous or selfless at the time, but I did, and it helped, and I think it allowed him to work with me again. And I think it's an important lesson, and it's hard.
Sorry, can everybody hear in the back still? If you could speak a little bit closer.
Sure. So here's the last one. If you find yourself considering a partner because they're a great engineer or because they're a sales guy and you hate sales, and you think that's going to work out great, but in your heart of hearts, you don't know whether this guy's really committed. You don't know whether he really believes or she really believes that you can do this thing together, then I think you ought to think twice. Fear has very little place in entrepreneurship. I think there is usually one leading partner and one person who kind of gets dragged in and told the story and sold the idea and brought in on the dream. I think you have to make sure that both people have have enough of the sense of fearlessness. You know, we honest to God believe we were going to be the team architect builders for the 21st century. And I think that allows us to get through a lot of hard spots. All right, now onto the more relevant things. I'm highlighting the pieces here that I think are the most important. We'll talk about them again later in another context. Our first major project was SportPoint Partners. I was at Silicon Graphics. I worked in sales, telesales actually, and I had Jim Clark come to our group and show us Mosaic and the about-to-be commercialized internet. And I built a content sharing system for the telesales group because we would get calls, no kidding, I'd get a call on the telephone from a guy who says, I'm trying to stream satellite imagery into a computer on the ground. It needs to get this many frames per second at this resolution. What is the configuration of Onyx supercomputer that I need for this? I mean, I was a telesales guy, right? I had been swinging a hammer 8 months before. So I needed to figure out the answer to this question. Then I get a call from a biologist who was doing crystallography, right, protein modeling, and he wanted to know what's the right system for this kind of thing. And then I get a call from Goldman Sachs saying I'm doing future modeling of Donald Trump's portfolio. I want to know what it's likely to be worth when the deal closes to see if it's going to work. And you know, how many challenge servers do I need to have for this? And anyway, the point of all this is that there really was no good way. It was 3-ring binders and find the engineer and see if you can get a little bit of his time. So we created an information sharing tool based on Mosaic and had the hair on the back of the neck experience. I think if you have the hair on the back of the neck experience, that's a pretty good time to think about starting a business. If you're trying to find the hair on the back of the neck experience, you know, you probably want to keep looking. We had it. You know, we knew that this was going to be something pretty special. I left and I joined a hardware reseller who was selling Sun, IBM, and HP systems for everything. And I asked him, I said, can I sell just into the internet space? And he says, you're 100% commission. You can sell whatever you want. You can sell them as paperweights. So I went out and I sold Silicon Graphics computers for use in the internet. I was one of just a couple of people in the country who knew how to plug in a Silicon Graphics computer as a modem server. And so I opened offices in 9 states within 6 months, and we were the largest reseller for the internet almost immediately. $9 million run rate the first year. That turned into the SportPoint Partners. What we realized was that companies didn't need servers for the internet, they needed internet businesses. And so we had to start advising them on how to do that. We spun the thing out, got it funded. We raised ultimately $50+ million from XL and Meritech and Baker and a couple of others. We grew. We're a fixed time, fixed bid engineering firm. We sold mostly against EDS and Sapient. And we did Nike's website and J. Crew and Martha Stewart and big e-commerce websites. This was the first time where Matthew and I were peers. So we went in and we said, we are co-president, co-CEO. And that was very jarring. But ultimately, I think, saved the company on multiple occasions. The first thing that we looked for, and again, hopefully this is something that you can use, you really, really have to believe in the other person's skills. You really have to believe in the other person's skills. It can't just be that you don't like to sell and this guy seems to be able to do it, or that you don't really understand technology and this guy has built an application before. You have to somehow figure out how you can trust this person absolutely, right? And I think where you have offsetting skills, I think that makes it a whole lot easier. I think Paul and I were talking about this before. One of the places where people get into trouble is the skill they're looking for is companionship, not true offsetting business skills. So they're going to start it with 2 of their buddies from business school, and it turns out that all 3 have the same skills. Right? Maybe one of them's a little more technical, maybe one of them's a little more salesy. That, in my opinion, is not enough. That's going to fail.